This is seeming a lot like it's going to be very reminiscent of Strike Witches, which is ironic because I literally just finished that show last night. Hello everybody, my name is Meisterbloo, and today I took a look at the show Kancolle. I think that's what it's called. That's what it would sound like in Japanese, I'm pretty sure, Kancolle. But I don't know if that's what it's going to be pronounced in English because it's spelled like Kancolle, or Kancolle, or something like that, something along those lines. This, like Strike Witches, is a militaristic type of thing where the main weapon of the army is girls. In Strike Witches, they were girls with magical powers and everything. In this one, they are girls who are possessed by the spirits of ancient sea battleships. Many of you may think that that sounds really stupid. However, that show actually proves that it can be a really cool idea. There are way too many characters that were introduced in this first episode for me to even begin mentioning them. I have them all written down, but honestly, you don't really get an insight into too many of them at all. You get an insight into, I think, one side character and then the main character, and that's it. But they showed like 30 different characters. That's an exaggeration. It wasn't 30, but you get my point. They were shoving too many characters in there to you, and you didn't really get a chance to be like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to find any of these interesting. What you can say, however, about the main girl is that she is the new transfer to a military base that houses all these girls with the spirits of warships and everything, and uses them for combat against an enemy called the Abyss, which was this enemy that just rose from the oceans a while ago and just started attacking mankind, much like the Neroi from Strike Witches. That's gonna be my phrase for the day, it's like Strike Witches. So the main girl's name is Fubaki, and she just got transferred. However, she's not really battle-hardened and everything, just like the main character from Strike Witches. She's a bit clumsy and everything, and apparently everyone at the base has heard about her because I think she's like a really rare type of battleship or something. I didn't really catch why they felt she was super important, despite the fact that she's never been in an actual battle whatsoever. But everybody at this base is like saying, oh my god, it's so cool that you're here, and you don't really know why. Funnily enough, she doesn't prove why in this episode. She really doesn't. Typically, when something like this happens in an anime, by the end of the first like little tiny bit of introduction story, whether it's the first episode or second episode in Strike Witch's case, you find out that, wow, this person is actually amazing and has amazing powers. But no, they don't do that. It's a curveball, and I really enjoyed having that like surprise, like, oh wow, it didn't turn out that she's just completely awesome at fighting and everything. She misses an enemy and almost gets killed. The way that they show these girls' abilities in combat ranges from pretty mediocre to actually really, really amazing looking, and the animation department like had a field day, I guess, with it, because one of the coolest things that you see in this episode is that there's a girl who's like possessed by a carrier ship, the ships that carry planes and all that. She's possessed by the spirit of one of those, and she uses a bow and arrow for her weapons, and she will like pull the arrow back and let it go, and the arrow will go soaring towards an enemy, and then the arrow will erupt into like 12 flying, like those old stereotypical Zero planes from Japan in World War II. And it's really stunning how the animation department like made that look. Like, there's one particular scene where the arrow comes out and your camera goes like from an under point of view of the arrow, and as it's coming back up, it explodes and turns into all of the planes as go flying towards the enemies, and that's really, really cool to see. So kudos on them for making some really, really amazing looking battle sequences during this first episode. The rest of the animation was kind of normal, very, very normal for nowadays, and to the point where it made me think maybe this is going to be a one episode kind of like thing, a one episode flair, and then the rest of the animation is going to be okay-ish, but not as good as the first episode. So I am curious to see whether or not they can hold up this entire time. There actually wasn't that much fan service in this episode too. That's something I'm surprised, because when I first saw the premise and everything and started watching the first episode, and I was thinking, wow, this is going to be just like Strike Witches, I thought, oh god, it's going to have so much fan service in it. But it didn't, honestly, and that's a real breath of fresh air, because I just finished Strike Witches, which is nothing but fan service. Of course, there are slight scenes here and there, but they're not the focus of anything. They're just like a 2-second clip of whatnot, and it's like, oh, she's jumping into her little thingamajig that like sends her flying across the ocean, just like Strike Witches. and it blows a gust of wind, but it's like for just a second and whatnot. Nothing too major, so I'm hoping they can keep it like this, because it really is a breath of fresh air after sitting through all of the first season of Strike Witches. I didn't really notice much about the music, it didn't really hit me, but then again, I didn't think it would from the show that seems like it's very animation heavy and less focused on all around like making the music good and everything. Didn't really stand out, whereas of course, like in Strike Witches, the music was one of the best parts. Like, the music for Strike Witches was one of the best things. I apologize, this is turning into a review of Strike Witches. Another really cool feature that I liked is that the characters themselves, they look like the stereotypical, like, girls and everything that go to a school and whatnot in an anime. However, the backgrounds and the scenes are all very, like, dark and kind of dirty looking and all that. Like, the school itself that they go to looks a lot like the school that you see in Corpse Party, if you guys ever watched that or even played the game. It looks a lot like that, where the walls and the wood that everything's made out of is really dark wood. Nothing's really that bright, but it doesn't give off a depressing sort of feel. It gives off more of a "this is war" kind of feel, like old World War II kind of feel, and I really dig that, because I love history. I'm a history buff, and I love like reading and watching stuff about wars and whatnot. And World War II is one of my favorite eras. It was a very hard time, but it's one of the eras that I find most interesting. And it seems like this is what they're going to go for, is this old war type of feel, which I'm perfectly down for, because, again, like in Strike Witches they had it like set back in time and all that, but it never felt like it was back then. It felt futuristic, or it felt modern day. With this, you can watch it and think, wow, this feels a lot like it's dated, even though it's likely not dated far, considering it's about battleships. Lastly, I want to talk about this weird half-CG kind of animation thing that was going on in this episode. A lot of the scenes during the combat, but nothing during any other moments that I could tell. During the combat, it's weird, like, there were times where I didn't know if it was CG or not, or CG or 2D animation. It seems like they blended it together at points, and it really actually worked. Where, like in Strike Witches, I hated the CG in that. There were CG scenes where, I think I mentioned this in my little review of the first, or impression of the first episode, where if they take off in Strike Witches, the characters kind of like get one pose and kind of just go, and like their limbs, nothing moves while they're flying around in CG, so it looks like they're like little figurines on a string going like this on a backdrop. But with this, they looked more like video game characters, like characters from the Tales games. That's what they kind of looked like when they went into this like weird half CG mix. They almost looked like Tales game characters, and I really liked that. The animation moved, their characters never looked stiff, and it really worked out for them in the end, I think. So yes, this has been the first episode of Kancolle. I'm going to check out the second episode. I think the third episode like literally just came out, so I'm gonna have to catch up on that and see where it goes from there. This really interests me. It's really cool to see like this weird kind of like magic spirit style thing with machinery. It's really interesting. I never really thought of it like that, but then again, society does call like machines, refer to them as she's a lot. Like, talk about a car, it's like, oh, she's my old car and whatnot, but never really seen it take on a story form kind of like this, which I find really interesting. If you have any anime or video games you want to recommend to me to try, let me know in the comments section, or go find me on my Tumblr or Twitter, either of those two places, even Facebook. I have a Facebook page still. Don't really go on that much anymore, because I don't use Facebook much anymore, but go to any of these places. If you guys have any recommendations, let me know about them. Share this video with anybody you think might be interested in the show, if you think that they'll like it. Yeah, and I'll leave the link to the show in the description, as always. So, until the next video, everybody, peace out. This is the best. This is the best game ever. Oh my god. Come here.